Myself and Geo have just finished recording Mug of Tea, which is the Patreon version of Cup of Tea with a slightly larger drink, of course. We didn't get through all the questions. We packed out an hour and 5 minutes. There was still much left to discuss. However, there's something I really want to get my teeth into, which is something I know is going to resonate with a lot of you guys watching this, which has to do with the path to the first team. Academy players, Equa leaving, Elise leaving, and I think we've got a question from Lewis, Gio.
Yes, we do. Lewis says, should we be worried about the amount of youth players that voiced their concerns about the door to the first team being firmly shut? They all seem to be aware of this, and it can't be good for the culture within the club. Granted, a lot of the youth prospects will never be good enough to play in the Premier League, but on the flip side, I worry that we could have a Rice or a Saka within our ranks that will never get a chance under David Moyes. I'm surprised the board are happy with this also.
Well, thanks for the question, Lewis. I mean, first of all, we don't know whether the board are happy or unhappy about this. I'm going to work on the assumption. I'll judge everyone as I would like to be judged myself. I'm going to assume they're quite unhappy with it. They're going to be pouring £4 or £5 million into an academy every year. They're going to want to see a path to the first team. So just keep the board separate from this because we just don't know what the truth is on that. I think it's also important to separate players who are going to make it and aren't going to make it. You don't know, but not everybody has to be a Declan Rice. So there are other players who have slipped through our fingers before, be it sort of Liam Ridgewell or there's loads of them, Leon Britton. There's loads of these players who go on and become good professional footballers elsewhere. I think the difference is this time is we have people like Sonny Perkins, who is banging them in for the England underage groups at the moment, has just gone and scored his first senior goal for Leeds United. Looks to be a really good player. And then when he leaves, he goes and voices his concern and basically said, I like West Ham. I remember his words, they're ringing in my ears. I had to leave for the sake of my career. Those are damning words. They really are. And then we have more recently, which is Equa has just left for Sunderland. I know Gio's going to give us a couple of the details about the deal and something he wanted to discuss. And of course, we've got Elise who's joined Sunderland. We're going to find out very, very quickly whether these players are good enough. Of course, Longello has played at Birmingham this season. I think for me, before we get Gio's opinion on it, for me, I think the frustration is this is not a situation where they've had a chance in the first team and we found out that maybe they're not quite good enough. And it goes into what Lewis is saying. There is no path to the first team. We've discussed it on numerous occasions. We had this situation with Elise where last season we were decimated with centre-back injuries. We didn't even have a fit one. We played one patched up. Craig Dawson was our only half-fit centre-back. And if at that point Elise is not going to get into the first team, there was no set of circumstances when he would. Was it Dynamo Zagreb, Gio, last season, the last group game of the group stage in the Europa League? Quite possibly. Elise was amazing. I thought Harrison Ashby, who's another one, by the way, was outstanding. Longello was a lot of people's man of the match. After that, we had a situation whereby Alpha Masuaku was injured and where Aaron Cresswell was injured. Still no room for Longello. He would almost try and do everything else. At that same point, may I stress, Soufal was injured, so it meant Ben Johnson had to play on the right. This is what we had happening here at the time. And I think if you are a young player and you're looking at West Ham, and more importantly, I think if you're a parent of a young player, you just do not send your players to West Ham. And I think I look at other clubs, and I mean most of them in the Premier League, under such circumstances where they're decimated by injury in certain positions, they'll utilise their youth players. We don't seem to.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people look at it through a black and white prism, which is, well, have they achieved anything after leaving West Ham? No. Well, I was right then. But I think the pressure is even more upon clubs to get these right than arguably ever before, because it can save you tens of millions of pounds in the transfer market. Before, to go get a right back for your first team wouldn't have cost that much. Now you're looking at 20, 30 million just to fill that one position. So arguably there's more pressure on it. And I think there is a big frustration on my part that it's like what you said, they never really got an opportunity. Now, if the manager came in and said, I don't want to use academy players, get rid of it, a bit like what Brentford have done, they've gone, well, let's just get rid of the academy, we're going to scrap that and we're going to focus on recruitment, then fine. But I think it's more when he suggests I give the young players an opportunity here. Then you're watching it thinking, well, you don't really, do you? And I always go back to, I always point to, as an example of the youngsters not getting a chance at West Ham, is actually the bench that Moyes sometimes uses on a weekend, or not necessarily, you just names, where it'll be really unbalanced. We won't have a fullback on the bench, or we won't have a centre-back on the bench. Instead, we've got 4 attacking midfielders. He just picks the most senior players to fill up the bench. Often we'll have 2 goalkeepers on the bench in the Premier League, rather than just having a youngster on there and stuff. And that's what frustrates me a lot. In regards to Elise, he might be one that we have got wrong. You know, I watched him for Sunderland against Borough at the weekend. Played really, really well at left back. Sunderland fans were raving about him. He's getting a lot of plaudits because of his speed, his strength, how composed he is on the ball. And we knew he had all this at West Ham. He was always a really good, strong ball-playing centre-back that represented England at the youth levels. And he's one that I had high hopes for making it. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit disappointed and to some extent surprised that he didn't make it. It just felt inevitable that he might have done it. And I don't rate our youngsters that highly, I don't think. But even going back to Tony Martinez, funny enough, someone that has gone on to make it. When I saw him, I'm not sure he's got it in the Premier League, but at least he was one of the few. I thought, yeah, he's got everything you need. And like you said, it was an easy game to put him in at Stamford Bridge as well, because we were heavily rotating because of the Europa League. So Moyes had a free shot that day, which is I put Elise in. And even if he messed up completely, had a nightmare, we conceded the goal because of him, Moyes would have sat there and said, yeah, but I'd like to give the youngsters an opportunity. We were down to one fit senior centre-back. Fine. But like you said, it's just the way that he just shoehorns senior players in. And Elise has gone on to do really well. And Ekwa has now just joined Sunderland. And what that does, it stirs the conversation again. So at the minute, it's a topic of discussion. We just did Mugger Tea, like 4 or 5 people were saying, can we discuss Ekwa leaving? Can we discuss the academy? Can we discuss the lack of opportunities? That conversation will die down in a month. But then another youngster will leave and it'll come back again, kind of thing. And it is incredibly frustrating because when you look at the current team, Declan Rice was given his debut by Slaven Bilic. Ben Johnson was given his debut by Manuel Pellegrini. And one thing that frustrates me is when a list of players come out of who David Moyes has given a debut to. I think, yeah, but that's a debut for the sake of a debut. Like that meaningless game against Ghana. Show me a player that Moyes has given a youngster to, Moyes has given a debut to, and he's gone on and had 15 first-team appearances for West Ham. There isn't any. There's none. He's been here long enough now. Over 3 calendar years, Moyes has been. That's long enough to start to implement a path. I understand when you come in in a relegation battle, but that's 3 years is more than enough time to start to see some players breaking in. Like you said, you're not asking for a whole team of youngsters, just a fair crack now and again for some of them. And it is incredibly frustrating. And it's just a waste of an opportunity, really. I think the club do some good work actually recruiting some of the youngsters. When Ekwa joined, by the sounds of it, Chelsea wanted to keep a hold of him and went and got him. Obviously, this hasn't worked out, but Ashley Fletcher was another one. Man, you wanted to keep him, but we were managed to persuade him to come down. To be fair, he got a few opportunities. He turned out to be rubbish. But I like those punts for players for 1 million, 2 million, 1.5. I like them punts. Louis Ziao is another one. We just signed him in January. Great punt. We're down to the bare bones centre back. Well, there's a centre back you've just signed. Can you give him up? No, we won't, because what we'll do instead is we'll just shoehorn someone else in at centre back. They won't all be good enough, but the worry is it's not necessarily are they good enough, it's are they getting an opportunity? And the answer has to be no. But because of the lack of success of these players that have moved on from West Ham, it's hard to really argue with the lack of opportunities, I guess.
Yeah, I think as well, just going back to what Lewis asked there, I don't think Ekwa's comments were great.
No.
Don't be wrong. Do you remember what they were, Gio?
Something, pleased to join a club which still gives their youngsters an opportunity. Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was barbed. There's no doubt about it. And I don't blame him, by the way. No criticism for him at all. I mean, we've just done the Mugger Tea, and we're very much discussing that when he joined us, he would have been joining us because there wasn't a path to the first team when he came from Chelsea. That there would have been. He would have thought they would have been path to the first team at West Ham. So you can understand he's a talented player as well. I watched watched the under-21s play. I think their first game of the season was against Arsenal. Again, he was the player that I picked out for West Ham. I thought he was really, really good. When we've done videos previously, he was the guy that I've picked out this season as the one that could possibly go on and do something. I think that's frustrating, but it was really interesting what you said about Pellegrini's. I was thinking about it. I think Pellegrini gave Ben Johnson's debut at left back against Manchester City, quite possibly. That's a big shout. And then you start thinking, for some reason, I've got it in my mind that Declan's was Arsenal. But even if it wasn't, I'll tell you who was. Bilic did give a debut against Arsenal, and that was Reece Oxford. I think at the time, 16-year-old Reece Oxford, and we all were doing we were doing the full photoshopping pictures of Reece Oxford.
Declan Rice's debut was technically Burnley away for 2 minutes in the last game of the season. Remember, the last game of the season, he came on for 2 minutes.
Okay,
last game, I think we won 2-1. Did Faguli not do like a little flick for the assist and stuff? Faguli had like man of match performance and then disappeared in the summer.
Yes, absolutely. Whatever happened to him? But so you look at that and you look at them getting their debuts. They are valid, sort of bona fide debuts against Premier League teams, and you're absolutely right. And I think I know we're sort of moving on from this, but I think this smacks of the whole situation of the path to the first team, where we now find ourselves that situation with Alphonse Areola, which I'm not going to labour because I discussed it yesterday, where there's no real path to the first team for even somebody like that. You have to feel that there's some value to a really good performance in the under-21s. And then if you get into the European squad, if you play really well in the European squad, maybe there's an avenue then that if you play well in that, it might get you in the bench for the Premier League team. And then you come off the bench, you play well, you might have a chance of getting the shirt. That's how it has to work. But I'm pretty sure if you were a youngster in West Ham's academy, and I've seen the training ground footage. Sometimes David Moyes brings them over to train. They bring them from Chadwell Heath to bring them over to Rush Green to train with the first team. And I think if you were that and you were playing with these first team players and there was a player as good as Flynn Downs there, and you'd seen Flynn Downs get back-to-back man of the match performances in Europe and then still not getting the first team, you'd probably be thinking, if he can't do it, I'm not going to be able to do it. So I'd imagine that sort of quells their motivation a little bit. Sorry, I noticed you jotting something down, Gio.
Oh no, I was just double checking the name of the Brighton striker I was way to refer to, which is Ferguson.
Yes.
So he'd been presented an opportunity, 18 years old. Go on then. Bang, goal. All right, hang on. Okay, you can have another goal. Now you're starting. Assist, goal. Bang, bang. Was dropped at the weekend. Danny Welbeck went in, come off the bench. Bang, got the goal to make it 2-2. Brighton have potentially just saved themselves 30 million. Yeah. Brighton have struggled to find a striker for the last 2 or 3 seasons. Funny enough, despite all the recruitment, how fantastic it is and how well Potter's done there, they've actually struggled to get a number 9. You could argue that Potter doesn't necessarily want one, but yeah, you always find a space for Danny Welbeck. And they've gone into the academy. Dezebri's gone into the academy. Well, we'll give him a go. Bang. There you go. All right, summer comes around. Forget striker. We don't need one. We've just saved ourselves 40 million. Use that money elsewhere. At the minute, Mubama should be sitting at West Ham going, Danny Ings is injured, playing Derby away on Monday night. Come on then, Gaffer. Get me in that team, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. Forget the last week of the transfer. Go get yourself a centre-back to replace Kurt Zouma, because you don't need a striker to replace Danny Ings. Me and Mikhail, we're enough. We'll see you through, and then Skamaka comes back, and I take my pecking order. But there should be an opportunity there for him on Monday, and there might be. But it won't be in the starting team. But regardless, the point is, could score a hat-trick away to Derby, and we'll go to St James's Park, and Antonio will start up front, and he might get a token gesture of 5 minutes at the end if Moyes feels like being generous to him. But that's not a pathway into the first team. That is the fact that we're playing a League One side. Oh well, we'll just put you in that. We're not that bothered about the cup. We'll just throw you out there. We need to protect Mikel Antonio because Skamaka and Ings are injured, so you're going to have to play this one. But it's also Armstrong Okaflex at the minute. Get back from Swansea. You're not getting game time there. Come back. But because you've already played for West Ham in the Conference League and you play for Swansea, you can't go to any other club. So you're now stuck at West Ham for the rest of the season. He should be thinking, brilliant, Gaffer. I'm going to show you in training and then put me on the bench at the weekend. You're down the bottom of the table. You're lacking creativity. You're lacking goals. Give me a chance. Let me show you. He ain't doing anything. He's in under 21s for the rest of the season. We might see him on the bench in the Conference League second leg should we win the first one comfortably against a poor team in European football. But barring that, again, Derby, we might see him in that one. But Premier League bench, no. Unless we are comfortable away from relegation by the end of the season and we're still in that European competition, which both looks unlikely at this point. But say we were, then you might see him. But he's not going to have a role to play. But he should be coming back from Swansea thinking, I didn't get a fair crack at Swansea. Well, he's gone from one club he don't get a fair crack at, back to his parent club where he doesn't get a fair crack at. He's 21. This is prime time for someone like that. Connor Coventry as well must be scratching his head thinking, hang on a minute, what am I doing here? What's the point? Flynn Downs is ahead. I mean, he can't get on the pitch. I can't even get on a flipping bench. It's the 25th of January recording that. He's probably thinking, can you just let me leave, please? Because I ain't going to get in the team. I'm wasting valuable months of my career here. This is such a pivotal time for me. And I'm just twiddling my thumbs because the youngsters at West Ham just don't get an opportunity. And it's something we need to rectify soon because I don't know how much you can take from the under-18s doing as well as they are. They've won every game in the league. They're through in the FA Cup competition, beating Burnley. There's a few players in that team look really promising. We know them, George Earthley. We've got Callum Marshall in there. Patrick Kelly's looking good. There's a lot of youngsters at West Ham looking quite promising. Ollie Scarles, is he ready for the first team? Not yet. But in 2 seasons, he might be. Well, I'll tell you what, we've got 2 seasons to get our finger out so that he can get into the first team because West Ham, there should be someone, alarm bells. Hopefully, this is what Mark Noble can sort out since he doesn't get a say in the recruitment. Hopefully, he can sort out something. Hang on a minute. We need the next manager has to promote from within here. That under-18s team are doing really well. They need to be rewarded, which is a step up into the under-21s. And if they perform well there must be a reward for that, which is into the first team squad. We don't learn anything from playing. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of a player that we know is on their way out in the summer. We've got rid of 1 or 2 of them. But say Dan Randall, for example, has been in and around the first team. There's almost no benefit to having him on the bench in the Premier League. But put Scarles on there, and if you're 3-0 down, bring him on and see what he can do. Opportunity, there's not even crumbs.
No, and I do think that there's a massive difference between last season. You might just accept it, that you can't break into the first team, to a team that are riding high in the Premier League, pushing for Champions League football in the knockout stages of the Europa League. No, but what I'm saying is you might, as a youngster, you might say, I can understand how I can't. The team are playing well. I understand why I can't get in ahead of Thomas Souček, who scored 10 goals this season. I get it. But when you look and you see the team is struggling, if you're a young player and you look at it and you start thinking, well, hold on a second, he keeps getting picked repeatedly. Why don't I? And then, you just go back to it and go back to, before we finish up, just go back to Mabama, who you brought up there. He should be looking at that situation now and thinking, well, you know what? He should have been almost buoyed by the fact that Perkins left because he should have been looking at it. I'm next in line now. Perkins has gone. I'm going to get a chance to showcase what I can do and get in that first team. And you look at it now, and all the strikers are dropping like flies. Even the new one's got an injury. I just wonder, if he makes a little phone call to Elise, who's obviously just one man of the match and all the rest of it, and maybe Elise might actually turn round to him and say to him, mate, it's brilliant.
Mubama's window of opportunity is small as well. Maybe this time next year, Callum Marshall might be the striker for the 21. Sure. So Mubama might be thinking, I've got about a year to get into that first team. Otherwise, I'm going to get knocked down the pecking order in this team. He's going to be ahead of me in the pecking order. So his window of opportunity is very, very small. And sometimes it comes down to luck. We know that the Tony Carr story about Glenn Johnson, they hadn't even earmarked him as a player for the first team. And it was a case of, if you got a right back, well, you can use him if you want. They put him in, and hey, bloody hell, look how good he is. So there is an element of luck about it, but there was an opportunity for that luck to evolve. For luck to occur, you need the opportunity. And like I said, I understand the situation. It's difficult for Moyes to put youngsters in at the minute because we're in a relegation battle. It was difficult last season, the season before. Well, so when is the opportunity going to rise? When there's 5 games to go and you're 9th, and you can't get European football and you can't get relegated, is that when the opportunities arise?
Yes.
Don't know. I don't like it. And like I said, people say, well, where's your example? Well, Nonto of Leeds, like you said, they bought him for 5 million, but they put him in the team. They said, there you go, you're good enough, in you go. Ferguson at Brighton, you're good enough, in you go. Let's see what you can do, kind of thing. We could go sign a 18-year-old Messi and he'd be at Sunderland in 2 years' time.
Absolutely. So there you go. Mubama to Sunderland. You heard it here first.